Remember, the devil doesn't have to come when you ask. It can come when it wants to destroy you. He says there's things that happen in this world that he said would stop your heart, is how he said it to me. My name is Tony Spera. I'm the director of the New England Society for Psychic Research, and that was started back in 1952 by Ed Warren and Lorraine Warren, psychic researchers. Well, you know, when I was growing up, I grew up in a very strict Italian family household. And we didn't talk about things like the paranormal. We didn't talk about ghosts. We didn't talk about devils or demons. You know, we went to church. The only spirits that I knew about were the ones you pray to. My whole thing started when I was a police officer back in 1979. I was sitting in an industrial park looking out at the roadway. I was doing a police report. And I'm doing the police report. I just happened to glance up towards the road, and there I see a brown station wagon. They call them station wagons back then. A brown station wagon driving by the roadway with a beautiful looking woman in it. And she smiled. I could see her face perfectly. She smiled and gave me one of these. I'm like that. And she goes by. 5 minutes later, another police officer calls me on the radio to meet him. And he says, "Hey, were you looking, did a girl drive by in a brown wagon and wave at you?" I'm like, you know, how does he know? I go, yeah, she did. He goes, "She was looking for me. She's a friend of mine." I go, "Oh, okay." He said, "When do you want to meet her?" I said, "Yeah, I'd love to meet her." He goes, "Don't worry, I'll set it up for you." And he introduced me, and she introduced herself as Judy. And I started dating her. I asked her out on a date, and she said yes. And about 3 weeks into my dating with Judy, she says to me, "Hey, Tone, you want to go see my parents lecture at University of Connecticut?" And I looked at her, I said, "What do you mean?" She goes, "Yeah, they're lecturing at Jorgensen Auditorium." I said, "What are they, college professors or what?" She goes, "No." She started laughing. No, they're not college. They're ghost hunters. They're the psychic researchers, Ed and Lorraine Warren. Have you ever heard of them? I said, "Yeah, I did. I've heard of them, but, you know, just in passing, kind of, I knew the name." She goes, "Yeah, let's go." So we went, and that's when I first met Ed and Lorraine. They were very nice. Lorraine was dressed in a nice kilt and a white blouse, and with her hair pulled up. And Ed was sitting there looking through his slides, trying to find out what slides he was going to use. And so we watched the presentation, Judy and I. And I was so astounded by the stuff I was listening to from Ed. I couldn't believe it, because I never saw ghost images and talking about devils and demons. And that's what Ed was doing. He was talking about devils and demons. So that got me really intrigued. And then after that, you know, I'd go over the house and learn more from Ed and Lorraine, because they'd always be talking about a case. And then Ed brought me down to the museum to see it, which we're in the museum right now. And I started to work with them as far as helping them out on their lectures. I used to run the equipment. And then at one point I said, "Ed, when am I gonna, go on a case with you?" He finally said, "You're ready, kid." And he used to call me kid. "You're ready, kid. You can come on cases." So the first actual paranormal or supernatural event that happened was when it was about 1981, when Ed and Lorraine called up and it said to Judy, "Hey, we're going to England. You guys want to come?" Sounds good to me. So we got our passports. We went to England. We landed at Heathrow Airport. We're sound asleep in our beds at this B&B and banging on the door. It's Ed. It's like about, I don't know, 12 o'clock at night, maybe 12:30. Banging on my door, and we wake up out of a sound sleep. He's like, "Come on, we're going." And he says, "Make sure you bring your camera with you and your tripod." I had a little tripod that you extend out. And back then there was no video. It was all 35 millimeter film. And he had a cassette recorder. So we get in the car, we drive to Whitby. We get there, and it's the ruins of an abbey that's on the North Sea. And he says to me, "Set up that camera over there." I'm setting up the camera. Ed's off maybe, I don't know, 30, 40 yards away, and he's got a cassette recorder. He's fiddling with it. As I'm setting up the recorder, putting it on the tripod, I get it all attached. I sense something. I turn around like this, and there's this black mass, probably about 6 feet tall, darker than the night. And the night was dark. I mean, the night was black, but this thing was blacker, so I could see it. Almost immediately, I felt like I had to fall down. And my knees got weak. I went to the ground. I remember I'm 30 years old. I fall down on the ground, and now I'm scared, and I'm trying to yell out. Finally, I was able to just get out a few words like, "Help, help." Ed heard me. I didn't know he heard me, but I thought, this is it. I'm looking at the ground, you know what I mean? I'm holding my hands like this. And I could hear something coming. I didn't know what it was. And then I heard a yelling sound. It was Ed. What he did was he ran towards this thing because he could see this black mass just as well as I could. And he had holy water in his hand in like a plastic bottle. And he's going like this with it, right? And he's yelling, "In the name of Jesus Christ, I command you to leave and go back to where you came from. In the name of Jesus Christ," over and over. This thing goes, gone. There's nothing there anymore. And Ed grabs my arm. He goes, "You all right? You all right?" I go, and I went, "What the hell is that? What the hell was that, Ed?" And he gets me off my feet. And he goes, "Come on, I'm going to walk you to the car. You sit in the back seat." He walks me to the car and he goes, "That was demonic." So I'm like, sitting in the car. He goes, "We're not going to do any investigation or anything tonight. We're going to leave." So he gathered up Judy and Lorraine. They got in the car. We went home. I was shaking like almost all the way home. Ed and Lorraine were psychic researchers before they even started the foundation. They went on a lot of cases right after Ed got out of the Navy. On his 17th birthday, Ed Warren joined the U.S. Navy during World War II. And he told Lorraine, because he'd already been dating Lorraine, he said, "Lorraine, when I get out of the Navy, I want to find out if other people have had haunting phenomena happen to them, such as happened to me in that house in Bridgeport." He lived in a house in Bridgeport, Connecticut on Jane Street from 5 years old to 12 years old, and he experienced a lot of ghostly and scary phenomena. So he would read these magazines after he got out of the Navy. Fate magazine was one of them. And he would read these articles about various haunted places. So they would go out and drive to these places that Ed read about. And he would take a sketch pad with him and a pencil. He'd pull up to the haunted place that he read about, take about 30 minutes to sketch the outside of the house, and then he'd hand the sketch to Lorraine and say, "Lorraine, go up, knock on the door. Whoever answers, tell him that your husband, out in the car, made a nice sketch of your house. He wants you to have it. Maybe that'll get us in the house. Maybe they'll invite us in." And that's what she did. She would say, "My husband's in the car there, and he loved your house. You want to take a sketch of it? Here it is." And say, "Well, have him come up. I want to thank him." Then when he got in the house, he would say, "Hey, I heard you had a problem here. I read about something about your house. What's going on?" That's how he'd start to learn. That's how they began. The parent investigation was in Harrisville, Rhode Island, about 1973. It started out with Carolyn Perrin being attacked in different ways. She was hit with a coat hanger when she went into the closet. One time Carolyn was sitting at her chair. She had an orange Now, you know oranges don't bleed blood, right? But she cuts open the orange and blood, rich red blood, starts to come out of the orange and falls onto her shoe. She's out in the garden one time and something pushed her onto a tomato stake and impaled her. She was in her bedroom one time and she heard and saw this image of this old hag. It looked like her head was detached from her body and hanging on her shoulder, and a voice echoed through to Carolyn saying, "I would drive you mad with death and gloom. I would drive you mad with death and gloom." These two gentlemen who were into the paranormal, Carl and Keith, called Ed and Lorraine in. They knew Ed and Lorraine. They said, "We got a case in Harrisville, Rhode Island. That's pretty bad, Ed." When Ed and Lorraine Warren arrived at the Harrisville house, they did an interview. They did a seance there too, I believe. But Lorraine felt that there was definitely something there in the house. I remember Lorraine said she walked up a flight of stairs, and as soon as she got to the top, she could feel it. Lorraine immediately said to Ed, "There's something dark here." At one point, Roger got very upset with Ed because the way his wife was acting at the table, like they were getting to the core of what was wrong. And at one point, Roger stopped the whole investigation, told them to leave. And they did leave. And I believe they didn't really resolve anything in that case. In other words, I think things still happened in that case that were unresolved. So it was one of those cases that, even though the movie shows it one way, you got to remember the movies are done for entertainment purposes. You know, the Brookfield case was pretty wild in itself. There was a book written about it called The Devil in Connecticut by Gerald Brittle. David Glotzel, 11-year-old boy, was possessed by a demonic entity in that house. Things were happening in that house that were indescribable. David would be regularly attacked. He would levitate. He would feel something grabbing him, pushing him down the stairs, pushing him around. He would see a hand come up through the bed. He had a creature, a dinosaur creature, plastic, that glided across the carpet and said, "You are all going to die." Arnie Johnson, whose girlfriend was Debbie Glotzel, David's sister, Debbie. And he used to stay at the house quite a lot. And got to really be friendly with everybody, like a family member almost. And he really liked David. Arnie was getting to the point where he was really getting angry that this thing kept attacking an 11-year-old boy, his friend, David. And at one point, Arnie made a mistake. He was standing in the middle of the living room, and he was so fed up with what David was going through that he yelled out, "Stop it. Don't bother him. I'm a man. Come to me. Take me on." Nothing at that moment happened at all to Arnie Johnson. But he was in the backyard or in the back near the kennel where Alan Bono owned a kennel. And Debbie Glotzel worked for Alan Bono. He said he was standing in the backyard with Alan Bono when suddenly he must have blacked out. He remembers standing there, then he remembered just waking up. And when he woke up, he was in custody, in handcuffs, by the Brookfield Police Department. What happened was he stabbed Alan Bono and killed him. Ed and Lorraine said, "We know what happened. We know that demonic influence came to Arnie when he challenged it." Remember, the devil doesn't have to come when you ask or challenge. If you said, "Come to me now," it doesn't have to come now. It doesn't have to listen to you. It has the wisdom of the ages. It's not something that's never walked the earth in human form. It can come when it wants to destroy you. And what it did, it tried to destroy Arnie by having him kill someone. But Ed tried to use the defense through a lawyer that the devil made Arnie do it. The defense was going to be the devil made me kill Alan Bono. And when he got to court, The judge said, no, that's not a legal defense. We don't talk about devils in our courtroom. We go strictly by the law that's written. And what happened was they had a trial, and Arnie was sentenced to 5 years in prison.